The emergency beacon from Haven Prime cut through the black of space like a scream. Admiral Kane stood on the bridge of the Defiant, watching the blue-green world grow larger through the viewscreen. 3 days ago, it had been a thriving human colony, home to 2 million souls. Now, according to the fragmented transmissions, it was something else entirely. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the surface," reported Lieutenant Bell, her voice tight with strain. "Put it through." The voice that crackled through the speakers was hoarse, barely holding together. "Admiral Kane, this is Governor Max. On Haven Prime, we need immediate medical assistance. The Kelder forces struck without warning. They hit the children's hospital, sir, all of it. 300 kids. Gone." Kane's knuckles whitened as he gripped the command rail. Around him, the bridge fell silent except for the hum of ship systems. The weight of those words, 300 children, settled on every soul present like a physical blow. "Survivors?" Kane asked, though he already knew the answer from the governor's tone. 17 children pulled from the rubble, sir. Most won't make it through the night." The Kelder commander called it a precision strike against a strategic target. They claimed the hospital was manufacturing weapons. Kane closed his eyes for a moment, seeing the faces of his own grandchildren. Back on Earth, when he opened them again, something fundamental had changed in their depths. "We'll be planetside in 4 hours. Hold position." The Defiant descended through Haven Prime's atmosphere like a falling star, accompanied by the rest of Kane's fleet. As they approached New Geneva, the colony's capital, the scope of the devastation became clear. The children's hospital had been a beautiful building once, designed to look like a castle to comfort young patients. Now it was nothing but twisted metal and concrete, a crater where hope used to live. Kane's boots crunched on debris as he walked through the ruins. Medical teams worked frantically around him, but their efforts seemed impossibly small against the magnitude of the loss. He found Governor Max standing beside a small pile of toys that had been pulled from the wreckage, a teddy bear with one arm missing, a toy spaceship with its wing broken off, a picture book with singed pages. "They knew," Max said without preamble. The Kelder knew exactly what they were hitting. This wasn't a mistake or bad intelligence. They targeted children on purpose. Kane knelt beside the pile of toys, picking up the damaged teddy bear. Its button eyes stared back at him with the same innocence that had been stolen from 300 young lives. The galactic community's response? The usual, deeply concerned. Calling for restraint. "The Terran ambassador says they're preparing a strongly worded resolution for the Galactic Council." Max's voice dripped with disgust. "Meanwhile, intelligence suggests half the species in the galaxy are secretly pleased. They think someone finally put humanity in its place. Every great journey starts with a few brave explorers. Sci-Fi stellar conflict is just beginning, and your support means everything. If you're hungry for HFY battles and tales of human valor against alien might, hit subscribe. It's free, and it helps us bring these frontlines to you." Standing among the ruins, Kane felt something ancient and terrible stirring in his chest. It was the same feeling that had driven humanity to survive ice ages, to cross oceans, to reach for the stars. But this time, it wasn't about exploration or survival. This time it was about justice, sir. Lieutenant Bell had followed him down to the surface. "Fleet Command is requesting our status report." Kane looked one last time at the ruined hospital, at the small bodies being carefully loaded into transport ships, at the tears streaming down the faces of rescue workers. Then he turned to his aide with eyes that held the cold fire of a species that had just remembered why it had conquered a galaxy once before. "Tell Fleet Command that Admiral Kane is requesting an emergency session with the Joint Chiefs. Full authorization codes. And Bell?" He handed her the damaged teddy bear. "Tell them the children of humanity have been murdered. Tell them it's time the galaxy remembered what happens when you threaten a human child." As his shuttle lifted off from the scarred surface of Haven Prime, Kane was already planning. The Kelder Empire sprawled across 47 star systems, protected by one of the most advanced military forces in the galaxy. They had never lost a war, never been conquered, never been made to pay for their crimes. That was about to change. The war room deep beneath Fleet Command on Earth hummed with tension. Admiral Kane stood before the holographic display, showing the Kelder, Empire's territory, a sprawling network of fortified worlds that had remained unconquered for over 2 centuries. Around the table sat humanity's most dangerous military minds: General Ross, the architect of the Proxima campaign; Admiral Chun, who had broken the siege of Titan; and Commander Vale, whose special operations teams had never failed a mission. The Kelder have 17 primary military installations, Kane began, his voice carrying the weight of command, each one capable of projecting force across multiple star systems. Traditional military doctrine would suggest we pick them off one by one, using our superior numbers to overwhelm their defenses. General Ross leaned forward, studying the display. But that would take years, and they'd have time to adapt, call in allies, maybe even target more civilian centers. Exactly. Kane manipulated the hologram, highlighting each Kelder base in red. Which is why we're not going to do it the traditional way. We're going to hit all 17 installations simultaneously. The room fell silent. Even by human standards, the plan was audacious to the point of insanity. Coordinating simultaneous strikes across that much space, against targets that well defended, had never been attempted by any species in galactic history. Commander Vale was the first to speak. The logistics alone, ... We'd need to split our forces 17 ways, coordinate through quantum communication across hundreds of light years, and execute with perfect timing. One mistake, and we lose everything. Which is why it will work, Kane replied. The Kelder are expecting us to be angry, to be reckless. They're not expecting us to be smarter than they are. Admiral Chun activated her personal display, running preliminary calculations. We could do it, but we'd need to strip defenses from every human world, recall every ship from patrol duty. We'd be gambling everything on a single operation. The children of Haven Prime already gambled everything. Kane said quietly. They lost. Now it's our turn to roll the dice. Over the next 72 hours, the plan took shape. Operation Reckoning would be the largest military undertaking in human history. 17 task forces, each commanded by humanity's finest officers, would strike simultaneously at the heart of Kelder power. The operation would require split-second timing, perfect coordination, and a level of tactical innovation that would push human military doctrine to its absolute limits. News of the massive fleet buildup spread quickly through the galaxy. Alien ambassadors flooded the Terran embassy with messages of concern, calling for restraint, warning of the consequences of such an aggressive action. The Galactic Council scheduled emergency sessions, with species after species urging humanity to pursue diplomatic solutions. But in the shipyards of Earth, Mars and Luna, the work continued. Cruisers and destroyers underwent rapid modifications, their weapons systems upgraded with experimental technology that had never been tested in combat. Marine units drilled in zero-gravity assault tactics, while Special Forces teams prepared for missions that would take them deep into the heart of enemy territory. The Kelder, for their part, seemed supremely confident. Their high command issued statements dismissing human threats as the desperate posturing of a wounded species. They reinforced their installations, called up reserves, and prepared for what they assumed would be a prolonged conflict that would ultimately end in human defeat. They had studied human military history, of course. They knew about the ancient wars on Earth, the colonial conflicts, the great battles that had shaped humanity's expansion into space, but they had missed something crucial in their analysis. They had studied how humans fought each other, not how humans fought when their children were threatened. Kane stood in the observation deck of the Defiant, watching the largest fleet in human history assemble in Earth's orbit. 3,000 ships, from massive dreadnoughts to nimble fighters, all preparing for a journey that would either establish humanity as the dominant military force in the galaxy, or see their civilization crushed beneath the weight of its own ambition. Sir, Lieutenant Bell approached with a communication pad. We're receiving final confirmations from all task force commanders. Operation Reckoning is ready to commence. Kane took the pad, scanning the messages from his fellow admirals. 17 separate acknowledgments, each representing thousands of lives, hundreds of ships, and the hopes of an entire species. His finger hovered over the authorization key that would send them all into the darkness. Admiral, Bell said softly. "Are you sure about this? Once we start, there's no going back." Kane thought of the teddy bear in his quarters, of the 300 children who would never go home, of the galaxy that had watched their deaths with secret satisfaction. Then he pressed the key. "All task forces, this is Admiral Kane. Operation Reckoning is now active. Remember why we fight. Remember who we fight for. And remember that the galaxy is watching to see what happens when humanity stops being nice." The great fleet began to move, splitting into 17 groups, each heading toward a different star system. Behind them, Earth watched and waited, knowing that in 72 hours, the balance of power in the galaxy would be forever changed. The Kelder installation at Fortress Prime had never been breached in its 300-year history. Built into the heart of an asteroid field, protected by energy shields that could deflect the impact of a small moon, it was considered the most impregnable military base in the galaxy. High Commander Vec had boasted that it would take the combined fleets of 10 species to even scratch its defenses. He was about to discover how wrong he could be. Admiral Kane's task force dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system, exactly 72 hours after leaving Earth orbit. Across the galaxy, 16 other human fleets were making identical transitions, each one emerging from the darkness like a sword drawn from its sheath. The coordination was flawless, the timing perfect to the second. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures throughout the asteroid field," reported Lieutenant Bell. "The Kelder are powering up everything they have." Kane studied the tactical display, watching as Kelder ships moved into defensive positions around their fortress. They had been expecting this attack, had prepared for it, but they were thinking like every other species in the galaxy. They were preparing for a conventional assault, a prolonged siege, a battle of attrition that would favor their defensive position. "Signal the fleet," Kane ordered. Operation Reckoning, Phase 1. Execute. What happened next would be studied in military academies for generations. Instead of the expected frontal assault, the human fleet split into dozens of smaller groups, each one diving into the asteroid field from a different angle. They moved with a precision that seemed almost supernatural, their ships weaving between massive rocks at speeds that should have been impossible. The Kelder defenders opened fire, their energy weapons lighting up the darkness like a deadly aurora. But the humans had done something no other species had ever attempted. They had turned the asteroid field itself into a weapon. Pre-positioned charges detonated throughout the field, sending carefully calculated debris, hurtling toward the fortress at precisely calculated angles. High Commander Vec watched in growing horror as his impregnable defenses began to crumble. The debris clouds disrupted his sensors. The exploding asteroids overwhelmed his defensive systems. And through it all, the human ships kept coming, their weapons finding gaps in his shields that shouldn't have existed. "How are they doing this?" he demanded of his tactical officer. "Sir, they're using the asteroid field's gravitational dynamics to amplify their weapons' effectiveness. Every shot is calculated to use the field's natural momentum. It's impossible. The computational power required. Then how are they doing it?" Vec screamed. The answer was simple, though the Kelder commander could never have understood it. Humans had spent millennia learning to work together, to coordinate, to function as a single organism when necessary. Every ship in Kane's fleet was connected through quantum communication links, their targeting computers sharing data instantaneously across the entire battlefield. They weren't fighting as individual ships, they were fighting as one vast, interconnected mind. Commander Vale's Special Operations Team had already breached the fortress's outer hull, their stealth ships slipping through the chaos like ghosts. They moved through the Kelder installation with mechanical precision, their armor painted with the names of the children who had died on Haven Prime. Each Marine carried a small photo tucked into their helmet, a reminder of what they were fighting for. The Kelder defenders had never faced anything like it. Humans in combat were relentless, creative, and absolutely ruthless. They turned everything into a weapon. Environmental systems, gravity generators, even the fortress's own defensive mechanisms. When conventional tactics failed, they improvised. When improvisation wasn't enough, they found a way to make it enough. "Sir, we're receiving reports from the other task forces," Bell announced, her voice tight with excitement. Fortress Beta has fallen. Fortress Gamma is under full assault. The Kelder are requesting reinforcements from their home fleet. Kane smiled grimly. Tell them they're welcome to try. But they might want to check on their other installations first. Across the galaxy, the pattern was repeating. 17 human fleets, each one adapted to the specific challenges of their target, were systematically dismantling the Kelder Empire's military infrastructure. The aliens had prepared for human anger, human recklessness, human brute force. They had not prepared for human intelligence, human coordination, human innovation. At Fortress Prime, the end came suddenly. Vale's team had reached the Central Command Center, their explosives placed with surgical precision. The fortress's shields collapsed, its weapons fell silent, and its defenders surrendered as human. Marines poured through the breaches. High Commander Thek found himself face to face with Admiral Kane in his own command center, surrounded by humans whose eyes held the cold fire of absolute determination. The Kelder commander tried to speak, to offer terms, to negotiate, but Kane silenced him with a gesture. "You killed children," Kane said simply. 300 innocent children. You called it a precision strike. You called it strategy. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "We call it murder. And now you're going to learn what humans do to child killers." The transmission went out on all frequencies, broadcast to every corner of the galaxy. 17 Kelder installations, each one considered impregnable, had fallen in a single day. The mighty Kelder Empire, which had never lost a war, had just lost 17 battles simultaneously, and humanity was just getting started. The Galactic Council Chamber had never seen such chaos. Representatives from dozens of species argued, threatened, and pleaded as the holographic displays showed the systematic destruction of Kelder military power. In less than 48 hours, humanity had demonstrated a capacity for coordinated warfare that shattered every assumption about their capabilities. Ambassador Lisa stood at the human podium, her expression serene despite the storm of alien voices demanding explanations, apologies, and immediate cessation of hostilities. Behind her, the tactical displays showed human fleets moving deeper into Kelder space, their advance unstoppable and methodical. "The Terran delegation calls for immediate human withdrawal," declared the Altarian representative, his crystalline features pulsing with agitation. "This aggression threatens the stability of the entire galaxy." "Does it?" Lisa asked calmly. "Or does it threaten the assumption that humanity will quietly accept the murder of its children?" The vegan ambassador, a creature resembling a walking tree, rustled its branches nervously. "Your species has violated every norm of civilized warfare. Simultaneous attacks across multiple star systems, the use of environmental weapons, the targeting of civilian infrastructure." "Civilian infrastructure?" Lisa's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. "You mean the military installations that the Kelder have been using to project force across the galaxy for 2 centuries? The same installations that planned and executed the attack on Haven Prime's Children's Hospital." She activated the central display, showing footage from the hospital ruins. The chamber fell silent as they watched human rescue workers pulling small bodies from the wreckage, their movements careful and reverent. "These are the civilians the Kelder targeted. 300 children, ages 3 to 17. They were receiving treatment for everything from broken bones to rare genetic diseases. The Kelder called them a strategic target." The silence stretched uncomfortably. Finally, the Centaurian delegate spoke. "We acknowledge the tragedy, but your response is disproportionate. The Kelder Empire has existed for over 600 years. Its destruction would destabilize trade routes, political alliances. Should have thought of that before they murdered children," Lisa replied. "But I appreciate your concern for stability. Let me share humanity's position on galactic stability." The display changed, showing the current position of human fleets. They had penetrated deep into Kelder space, systematically destroying military assets while carefully avoiding civilian targets. The precision was remarkable, every strike calculated to cripple the Empire's ability to wage war while leaving its people unharmed. "We are not conquering the Kelder Empire," Lisa continued. "We are disarming it. Every military installation, every weapons factory, every shipyard will be destroyed or captured. The Kelder will retain their civilian infrastructure, their trade networks, their cultural sites. But they will never again have the capacity to threaten human children. The Altarian representative's features shifted to a deep blue, a sign of extreme distress. And what of the other species who have defense agreements with the Kelder? Will humanity destroy us as well? Lisa smiled, but there was no warmth in it. That depends entirely on your actions. Any species that attempts to interfere with Operation Reckoning will be considered complicit in the murder of 300 children. We will respond accordingly. The threat hung in the air like a physical presence. Around the chamber, alien delegates exchanged worried glances. They had underestimated humanity before, dismissed them as a young species playing at galactic politics. Now they were seeing what humans were truly capable of when pushed beyond their limits. "This is madness," whispered the Draconan ambassador, his scaled hide rippling with fear. "No single species can dictate terms to the entire galaxy." "Watch us," Lisa replied. Meanwhile, in the depths of Kelder space, Admiral Kane stood on the bridge of the Defiant, watching the final phase of Operation Reckoning unfold. The Kelder home fleet had made its last stand at their capital system, throwing everything they had at the advancing human forces. It hadn't been enough. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the Kelder High Command," reported Lieutenant Bell. "They're requesting terms for surrender." Kane studied the tactical display. The Kelder fleet was shattered, their homeworld's defenses in ruins. Across their empire, the last few military installations were falling to human forces. The species that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries was broken, their military might reduced to scattered remnants. "Put them through," Kane ordered. The face that appeared on the screen was that of High Admiral Voss, the supreme commander of Kelder forces. His normally proud features were haggard, his eyes hollow with defeat. "Admiral Kane, I am authorized to offer the unconditional surrender of all Kelder military forces. We accept responsibility for the attack on Haven Prime. We are prepared to face justice for our crimes." Kane studied the alien commander for a long moment. In the background, he could see the Kelder homeworld through the viewscreen, a beautiful blue-green sphere that reminded him painfully of Earth. Millions of innocent beings lived there, beings who had played no part in the decision to murder human children. "Your surrender is accepted," Kane said finally. "But understand this, justice for the children of Haven Prime will be more than words. Your empire will be restructured, your military disbanded, your weapons destroyed. You will spend the next century making amends for what you have done." "And if we refuse?" Voss asked quietly. Kane's expression hardened. "Then you will discover that humans can be far more ruthless than you ever imagined. The choice is yours, High Admiral. Redemption or annihilation." The transmission ended, leaving Kane alone with his thoughts. Around him, the bridge crew worked quietly, monitoring the final stages of the operation. They had done it 17 task forces, 3,000 ships, and the determination of an entire species had brought the mighty Kelder Empire to its knees. But the victory felt hollow. 300 children were still dead, and all the military conquest in the galaxy couldn't bring them back. What they could do was ensure that such a tragedy never happened again. "Sir," Bell approached with a communication pad. "We're receiving congratulations from the other task force commanders. Operation Reckoning has achieved all primary objectives." Kane took the pad, but his eyes remained fixed on the Kelder homeworld. "Send a message to Fleet Command. Tell them that Admiral Kane recommends immediate implementation of the Sanctuary Protocols. Any species that targets human civilians will face the full might of the Terran Defense Force." "Sir, the Sanctuary Protocols haven't been ratified by the Galactic Council." "They will be," Kane replied with absolute certainty. "One way or another, they will be." 6 months after the fall of the Kelder Empire, the galaxy had learned to live with a new reality. The species that had once dominated vast swaths of space now existed as a protected zone under human administration. Their military was gone, their weapons factories converted to civilian manufacturing, their culture carefully preserved, while their capacity for violence was systematically eliminated. Admiral Kane walked through the corridors of the former Kelder High Command, now transformed into the Haven Memorial Center. The walls were lined with holographic displays showing the faces of the 300 children who had died on Haven Prime. Each image was accompanied by a small biography, a life story cut short by alien ambition. "The reconstruction is proceeding ahead of schedule," reported Director May, the civilian administrator who had taken over the day-to-day management of the former empire. "The Kelder are surprisingly cooperative. They seem to understand that this is their chance at redemption." Kane nodded, pausing before a display showing a young girl named Beth who had been 8 years old when she died. She had been receiving treatment for a rare genetic disorder, something that would have been easily cured with a few more years of medical advancement. Instead, her dreams of becoming a starship pilot had died with her in the ruins of a hospital. "Any resistance movements?" Kane asked. "None worth mentioning. There was a small group on Kelder Prime that tried to organize a rebellion, but their own people turned them in. Apparently, most Kelder citizens are horrified by what their military did. They're genuinely grateful for the chance to make amends." It was a pattern that had emerged across the former empire. The Kelder people, once they learned the full scope of their military's crimes, had embraced the human occupation with surprising enthusiasm. They worked in the memorial centers, taught their children about the importance of protecting the innocent, and participated in the reconstruction efforts with genuine dedication. "The Galactic Council has finally agreed to ratify the Sanctuary Protocols," May continued. 27 species have signed on, with more joining every day. The vote was unanimous, which is probably the first time in Council history. Kane smiled grimly. "Fear is a powerful motivator. They've seen what humans do when our children are threatened. They don't want to find out what we do when the entire galaxy's children are at risk." The Sanctuary Protocols were simple in concept but revolutionary in implementation. Any species that targeted civilian populations, especially children, would face immediate intervention by the Terran Defense Force. The protocols had been designed to prevent another Haven Prime, to ensure that the galaxy's youngest and most vulnerable would be protected by the overwhelming power of human military might. "Sir," May said hesitantly, "there's something else. We've been receiving requests from other species." "Requests for protection?" Kane raised an eyebrow. "From whom?" "The Altarians have been dealing with pirate raids in their outer colonies. The vegans are facing territorial disputes with the Draconan Confederacy. 3 different species have asked for human peacekeepers to help resolve conflicts." May pulled up a holographic display showing the requests. "They're all offering substantial payment, trade agreements, territorial concessions." "And what do they want in return?" "The promise that humanity will protect their civilians the same way we protected our own. They want to know that if someone targets their children, the Terran Defense Force will respond with the same intensity." Kane studied the display, seeing the requests from species that had once dismissed humanity as upstart colonists. The same aliens who had offered hollow condolences after Haven Prime were now begging for human protection. The irony was not lost on him. "Draft a response," he said finally. "Tell them that humanity will consider each request on its merits. But make it clear that our protection comes with conditions. No targeting of civilians, no use of children as weapons or shields, and absolute adherence to the Sanctuary Protocols." "Sir, this could make us the de facto peacekeepers of the galaxy. Is that what we want?" Kane looked around the memorial center at the faces of the children who would never grow up, never explore the stars, never have children of their own. "It's what they deserve," he said quietly. "Every child in the galaxy deserves the chance to grow up safe, to dream of the future, to reach for the stars without fear." As he spoke, a group of young Kelder students entered the memorial center, their teacher explaining the significance of each display. They moved with the respectful quiet of children who understood that they were in a sacred place, their young faces serious as they learned about the cost of their species' crimes. One of them, a girl no older than Beth had been, approached Kane shyly. "Are you the admiral who saved us?" she asked in carefully practiced human standard. Kane knelt down to her level, seeing in her eyes the same innocence that had been stolen from Haven Prime. "I'm the admiral who made sure it won't happen again," he said gently. The girl smiled and placed a small flower on the memorial wall before rejoining her class. Kane watched them go, thinking about the future they would inherit. It would be a galaxy where children could grow up without fear, where the strong protected the weak, where humanity's greatest strength, its refusal to abandon the innocent, would shape the destiny of countless worlds. Lieutenant Bell approached with a communication pad. "Sir, we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth. Fleet Command wants to know if you're ready to return home." Kane looked one last time at the memorial wall, at the faces of the children whose deaths had changed everything. Then he turned toward the exit, where his ship waited to carry him back to Earth. "Tell them that Admiral Kane is ready to come home, but also tell them that our work here is far from over. We have a galaxy to protect." As the Defiant lifted off from the former Kelder homeworld, Kane stood in the observation deck, watching the planet shrink below them. The galaxy stretched out before them, vast and full of possibilities. It was a galaxy where humanity had proven its strength, where the innocent were protected, and where the memory of 300 children would ensure that such a tragedy could never happen again. The stars beckoned, and humanity answered with the promise that every child in the galaxy would grow up under their protection. It was a promise written in the ruins of the Kelder Empire, sealed with the tears of a species that had learned too late the cost of threatening human children. The galaxy would never be the same. And that was exactly as it should be.